Hi 8th graders, this is Mrs. Shopper coming to you with your first of many amazing videos about what we're doing in class. This is meant to help you be more efficient, so if you're learning from home or at an at-home day, you can choose to watch this video. Pause it, go back, go forward, whatever you want to do. This is really to help you out. If you've got questions after any of these videos, feel free just to send me a message in Schoology and we'll chit-chat about it, okay? So what I need you to do is define your Algebra Unit 1, Part 1, Expressions Notes. I'm going to follow through in those slides, and so you will be able to write into your notes packet and fill it out and use that as your reference, okay? So pause it until you find it, and then come on back. The first thing we're going to be talking about today is going to be square roots and perfect squares, okay? Now you may or may not have heard these terms before, and I'm going to assume that you haven't, so that if it's been a long time ago, we're going to refresh your memory. A square root is one of two equal factors. Factors are what you multiply together to get a number, that form another number. So for example, the square root of 64 is 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. So 8 is the square root of 64. The square root of 100 is 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. And if you notice this sign right here, that's called a radical. Adjust the video a little bit. That's called a radical, and the radical symbol. And so that's how you make it. It's like a big old check mark, all right? Now a perfect square is a number whose square root is an integer. What's an integer? An integer means that there is no decimal and no fraction. That's what an integer is, okay? So an example of a perfect square is 16 because its root is 4, and 4 doesn't have a fraction, 4 doesn't have a decimal, okay? 81 is also a perfect square because the square root of that is 9 and 9 ends. Some non-examples would be 5. If you type in on your calculator the square root of 5, you're going to get a really long number that will never end. It's kind of like pi, just never ends. Same thing with the square root of 92, okay? So perfect squares mean, when you find their square root, that it's no decimal and no fraction. This right here is a multiplication table, and the reason why I'm pulling this up is I want to show you all of these numbers highlighted in yellow are the perfect squares, because when you follow 81 up you get 9, 81 across you get 9. All of these numbers are the perfect squares. It would be a good idea to remember what these are, okay? And if you're like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to remember those? How am I ever going to do this? The best way to remember them is just to say, okay, 1 times 1, 1. That's the first one. 2 times 2, that's 4. That's the next one. 3 times 3 is 9. That's the next one. And that's going to help you with that process, okay? So these are the perfect squares. If you need to use a multiplication table, use it. I don't care. Now, if you're not so comfortable with your multiplication facts, I would strongly recommend trying to practice them. Do you need to be an expert? No. Do you need to be super speedy fast? No. But being able to understand them and have a better comfortability level with them will help you out to be more efficient down the road in math, okay? So, I have some fun games if you want to play. I can tell you about those. All right, so how we're going to use roots is by figuring out which integer, okay, remember integer has no fraction, no decimal, which integer is between, these two numbers are between. So for example, the square root of 94, if I go back to my table, I know that 94 falls between these two numbers. It falls between 81 and 100. So I'm going to say this falls between 81, it falls between 100. Okay? The square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 100 is 10. So this is the answer to the question, which integers is the given number between? Okay, it is between 9 and 10. Looking at 52, I'm going to go back to my chart. 52 is between 49 and 64. I'm looking at which two perfect squares it's between. It's between 49 and 64. So it's between the square root of 49, the square root of 64. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of 64 is 8. So the integers it's between are 7 and 8. Looking at 156, I'm going to go back to my chart. 156 falls between 144 and 169. So I'm going to come back. The square root of 156 is between the square root of 144 and the square root of 169. And so I had to think for a minute, you guys. I didn't know that one off the top of my head. We got to practice more. So the square root of 144 is 12. The square root of 169 is 13. It is between 12 and 13. Which integers is the given number between? It is between 12 and 13. That's the question we're continuing to answer. Square root of 32. I'm going to go back to my chart. 32 is between 25 and 36. So I'm going to say that the square root of 32 is between the square root of 25 and the square root of 36. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 36 is 6. Those are the two integers it's between. All right? Now, which integer is it closest to? So what we want to know is which integer is it closest to. So we only want one answer, just one. So the square root of 13 is between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16. I'm going to look at this and be like, you know what, 13 is closer to 16 than it is to 9. So the integer it is closest to is 4, because 13 is closest to 9. The square root of 125 is between the square root of 121 and the square root of 144. The square root of 121 is 11, and because 125 is closer to 121 than 144, the closest integer is 11. Two more. The perfect squares are between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49, and I said that wrong. The square root of 37 is between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. So the square root of 36 is 6. It is closer to 36. Therefore, its square root, the integer, is the one it's closest to. And the last one, the square root of 200 is between 196 and the square root of 225. It's closer to 196. So the square root of 200, if you type that in your calculator, it's going to be closer to 15 than it will be to 16. And this is your first video, all right? You can go ahead and work on the practice, and then let me know if you have any questions. Take care, kiddos.